Chapter 1. The Sand and the Sky. The year is 1990, and Anthony Swafford has enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. At only 20 years old, he's no stranger to the military his father and grandfather both served. However, Swafford doesn't exactly share their love for war and duty. He joined the Marines out of a mix of pressure, confusion, and a desire for meaning in his young life. As he begins his training, he finds the intensity and discipline of the Marines overwhelming. Swaff quickly discovers that Marine boot camp is nothing like what he imagined. He meets several of his comrades, all just as confused and lost as he is, but determined to prove themselves. Among them is Troy, a sharp-tongued and intense soldier who quickly becomes Swaff's closest friend. The days are long and grueling, filled with drills, punishments, and endless instruction on combat tactics, all meant to mold them into deadly precision warriors. Soon enough, Swafford and his fellow Marines are informed that they'll be deployed to Iraq as part of Operation Desert Shield. Saddam Hussein has invaded Kuwait, and the United States is about to retaliate. They're headed for the burning sands of the Middle East, a place that feels as alien as the moon to them. For many, this is their first real taste of war, and the unknown terrifies them. Chapter 2. Boredom in the Desert. After weeks of preparation, Swaff and his unit land in Saudi Arabia. But instead of the combat they were expecting, they are greeted by nothing but vast stretches of endless desert and sky. The war, they are told, will take time to reach them. Operation Desert Shield is in full effect, and for now, they're to hold the line and wait for orders. Life in the desert becomes a test of patience. They train, sweat, and try to stay sane as they endure the punishing heat, with temperatures reaching well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The Marines are soldiers trained for battle, but here there is no enemy, no action, only the sun, the sand, and their thoughts. Swaff begins to reflect on his life, his purpose, and his growing disillusionment with the military. The camaraderie among the men becomes the only thing keeping them together. There's Troy, who shares Swaff's frustrations but remains fiercely committed to their mission. Then there's Fergus, a goofy, light-hearted Marine who helps keep morale high. And Kruger, the squad's leader, a no-nonsense man with a strict view of duty. The days stretch into weeks, and the weeks into months. The constant boredom, mixed with the fear of the impending conflict, starts to take its toll. Swaff grows restless, his mind wandering back to his girlfriend back home, Christina. He receives letters from her, but doubts begin to creep in about her loyalty. The distance and isolation eat away at him, as they do with many of the other men, who start to lose themselves in a haze of frustration and anxiety. Chapter 3. The Waiting War. Despite the heat and monotony, the Marines continue to train. They are eager to put their skills to the test, but instead, they face a war of the mind. Swaff and his fellow soldiers have to confront their own thoughts, doubts, and fears. The psychological strain of waiting for combat is perhaps more taxing than actual battle would be. The tension among the men grows. They begin to lash out at one another, fighting over small things, arguing over personal matters, and struggling to maintain discipline. Swaff and Troy, once close friends, start to butt heads as the stress of war and the lack thereof frays their nerves. Swaff is selected to become a sniper, and Troy is assigned as his spotter. They train for hours each day, learning how to focus on a single target, calculate distances, and move silently through enemy territory. They're proud of their new roles, but also haunted by the reality of what it means. They're preparing to kill, to take lives with cold precision. The training is meant to make them into the perfect weapons, but it also takes a toll on their souls. The radio crackles with news of the airstrikes beginning in Baghdad. Operation Desert Storm has been launched, and the Marines are now preparing to move. But still, they wait. The ground war has not yet begun, and the frustration of being on the sidelines intensifies. Swaff writes more letters to Christina, but receives fewer responses. His mind becomes consumed with thoughts of betrayal, wondering if she's moved on with someone else. Chapter 4. The Fire Rises. Finally, the moment the Marines have been waiting for arrives. They are deployed to the front lines, prepared to invade Iraq. The desert is a strange and surreal place. Burning oil fields stretch for miles, filling the sky with thick black smoke. The air smells of sulfur, and the ground is littered with the debris of war. It's a sight none of them expected, but one that will stay with them forever. Swaff and Troy are assigned a mission to take out a key Iraqi officer. It's their first real chance to see action, and they're eager to prove themselves. But as they prepare to make the kill, they are stopped by their commanding officer. The airstrikes have already decimated the enemy position, and their services are no longer needed. The disappointment is crushing. After months of waiting, after all their training and preparation, they're denied the chance to take part in the battle. Swaff feels the weight of it more than anyone. He's a sniper trained to kill, but the war has passed him by. All the blood, sweat, and tears he's put into becoming a Marine, and he hasn't even fired a single shot. As the ground war intensifies, the Marines push deeper into Iraq. But the fighting is brief. The Iraqi army, overwhelmed by the American firepower, surrenders quickly. The war, it seems, is already over. Chapter 5. Coming Home. With the war effectively won, Swaff and his fellow Marines are sent back home. The victory is hollow for many of them, especially Swaff, who returns to a life he no longer recognizes. The months in the desert have changed him, but not in the way he expected. He didn't face the horrors of combat, but he faced something just as difficult: the emptiness of waiting for a war that never really came. When Swaff returns to the United States, he tries to pick up where he left off, but everything feels different. Christina has moved on, confirming his worst fears. The camaraderie he had with his fellow Marines fades as they each go their separate ways, struggling to adjust to civilian life. Troy, his closest friend, is dishonorably discharged, another casualty of the system they believed in. Swaff realizes that while the war may be over for the world, it continues to rage inside him. The experience of being a Marine, of preparing for battle, only to be denied it, has left a mark that won't easily fade. He reflects on what he's been through, on the futility of the conflict, and the psychological scars it's left on him and his fellow soldiers. In the end, Swaff knows that the war he fought wasn't in the desert, it was in his mind. He's left with more questions than answers, more doubt than certainty, and a deep sense of loss for the innocence he once had.